Hello everyone, welcome back to another lecture on the course Python Fundamentals Building Blocks for Aspiring Developers. So again, we'll continue with the data structures in this fifth module. We're at the 18th day of our agenda. So we will have a look at the list comprehensions and nested list comprehensions. So let's begin. So what is list comprehension? So they provide list comprehension is kind of a concept or a syntax that allows us to create lists in a concise way. Okay, quickly create lists with data in the list when we are defining that. So the data that we generate in a list can be according to an expression, um, and we can also like kind of extract some data according to an expression from an existing iterable. We can use this comprehensions for dictionaries, sets, tuples, but in this one we will have a look at the list comprehensions. And it also allows us to filter elements based on certain conditions. So this basically provides us with another use case of this, that is to create lists simply and quickly, and the second is to filter an existing list quickly. Okay, so this is the basic syntax. Um, So how we write is that in the square brackets we say expression for item in iterable if condition. So the expression at the is the first thing at the start. If you look at the example at the bottom, expression is x squared, and then for x in range is simply how you write a for loop. So you say for x, which is the item, the variable representing each item. Iterable is a list, tuple, or range. You could also use any other one, dictionary or things like that, with a slightly different modification. But for now, let's stick to this range. And then we can also use a if condition. If there is a condition. Conditional is optional. We can omit the condition. We can put the condition as we want if we want, but we cannot omit any of the other three. So what this is doing is basically for first five numbers 0 to 5, it is creating a list that has the square of the numbers from 0 to 5. Now if we look at the list comprehension, what is a versus a simple list creation, this is how it looks like. So at the top is a simple list creation, at the bottom is a comprehension. So let's see the item. You can see the item in the first one for I in range, item is I. In the second one, again, the same thing, same exact concept. The iterable is the same exact. We can also use a list for iterable. Instead of range 5, I could say an existing list is there. I could put that list there. And the expression in the upper one, in the top one, the expression is within the loop, and we are actually appending the value to another existing list, that is an empty list squares. So this is one extra line, but in the bottom one where we are using comprehension, we are just saying okay, this is the expression, we're not appending it manually. So this is like the difference between these two, just a difference in syntax. Both will perform the same exact thing. um, Now we can also use nested list comprehensions. So what nested list comprehensions will allow us to do is that it will allow us to do two things for two lists. Okay, so for example, we have a outer list and we have an inner list, but we want to perform an operation or filtering on both of the list, or we want to create a new list based on two values. So that is when you can use this list comprehension. For example, for this one, we are creating values 0, 1, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, 0, 2, 4 in a list that is I multiplied by j. So for the 4 values, like it is kind of a matrix, 3 by 3 matrix, values from 0 to 3, and we're kind of creating the output um, with the multiplication of two numbers between 0 and 3. And if we go down, I will have a look at the advantages of list comprehensions. So why it is that we want to use list comprehension even though it seems complicated? but it is not complicated, that I can assure you. But still, it is a concise syntax. Obviously, in one line we can do the things that we could, like in a simple list that would take us 3-4 lines, we can do it in one simple line. So this makes it like use less code, so it takes up less number of lines in the code, and it is also readable, very easy to read, because everything is just happening in one line, and it's efficient. Like for tasks that we saw, that we said that okay, this is the use case for this one, like filtering or creating a new list, it is much more efficient if we do it using list comprehension rather than using a simple list with a for loop. So if it's possible for you to apply this list comprehension, go for this one instead of other for loops, because this is a bit more efficient and a bit more faster than the other one. Now let's start coding. So I want to go back to the file. So I have this previous file open from the previous one. I'll just remove everything. We don't need that now. So the first thing I'm going to do is that start with the list creation. So let's say I have a list, my list, and if I wanted a list to have the values of 1 to 5, but I would do 1 2 3 4 5, right? Now if I have a list, another list, and I want to say my list is equals to this, here I say expression x for x in range 5, that's all, right? Now I say print my list, and I will make it my list 2, and I will say print my list 2, save it, run the code. And let me just clear this for here, and then again run the code. So you see both of them have generated 5 values. Now this one is from 1 to 3 4 5, but this is from 0 to 4, because again Python is 0 index values, it starts from this one. So what I could do is that like this. So this is what I should have written in the start, right? So both of them can generate these values. Now if I wanted to generate the square values of first 10 values, if I were to do it manually, I would say okay, square of 0 is 0, square of 1 is 1, then 4, then 9, then 16, then I will have to calculate for each value and then write it down. But here what I could do is that okay, expression is this one. So for x in range 5, for each of the element up till 5, store a square of that one into the list, right? So if I print that one, first one is just simply that list, but for the second one we have this list. We can also increase the range. So let's say 10. The first 10 values, right? Why not? So for the first 10 values, that is for 0 to 9. You see how easier it is to use this one. I could also use, like if I were to compare it to for loop, let's say I had a list, or instead of my list I will use the for loop, but this one I will say squares. So this is list is to store the squares. So I say for I in range 10. So for the first 10 iterations, my list square dot append, and then you want to append what, I squared, so I do this, and now this. Now I can finally print this my list squared and run the code. So both of them are exactly the same. You see how much lines this took? 2 lines. How much lines this took? 6 to 10, 1 2 3 4 5 lines. It was much more concise to write it this way, right? Now if I were to do like a very big operation, like I don't know, I multiply by 1, then I do I multiply by 4, then I do I multiply by like 4, then I divide and everything, like there's a ton of operations. So so fitting those operations in here would not be nice. So that is when I would use this for loop, right? But if it is something like this, I could also add like more things. I could also do +1 like this. Let me get rid of this one. So now 1 is added to each of the um, squares. Now I also, what I say is that I only want the square values which are even. So here I can write a condition. If x2 modulus 2 is equals to 0, right? Makes sense? Let's do it. 0 for 16, 36, 64, right? So it is first, the if condition is first calculating the square and then doing the modulus and checking if it is even. I cannot use x value over here because the square is not yet calculated, right? So this is why I have to do this x squared modulus 2 and so on. So this is how we use list comprehensions. We can also quickly see the list comprehension um, for the nested loops. So what I want to do is that first I want to say okay, nested loop is equals to the first one. We say that for like I static j for I in range, let's say 3, and then I say j for j in range, let's say 3, and let's close this over here, and let's close this over here, and let me say nested loop, and let me print it. This one, let me get rid of this one, save it, run the code, and say 0 0 0 0 1 2 0 2 4. So this is like two loops. So this is something like this for I in range 3. Then it says for j in range 3. Then it says I static j like let's say list li is equals to empty list, and I'm saying li dot append this thing, and then I say print li and so on. Okay, yeah, it should be nested list. Sorry about that. Just so it is easier to read like this. Oops, sorry. What it is doing is that we should have another list over here. So let's say temp list is equals to this. Now temporary list becomes empty after each iteration, and we say temp list dot append this, like append this thing into this list, and now append this list, temporary list, which has now been filled with 3 values, into the main list. And now in the next iteration, temp list again is empty, so the next 3 values will be correct, like this. So in the first iteration, list is empty, we said temporary list, this one is empty right now. We had 3 values. Okay, now this has become this one. We append this list to this outer list, move on to the next iteration. Now this list again is empty list, it has no values in between, 0 1 2 do not exist. After this loop, this inner list will have this value 0 1 2, and then we append this one to the outer list and so on. So you see, 2 lines of code versus around 7 8 lines of code. So you can see which one is concise. We can also have much more operations, like we can also have a conditional over here, conditional over here, and so on. So I could say if I mod 2 is equals to 0, and let me give it a bit more values till 5. This will only do for if the value of I is 0, right? If I is even. And we can also do this if j mod 2 equals to 0, something like that. So you see we only are left with 4 and 8. So what is this? What is happening is that we have the 1, 2 and 3. Sorry, 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 0, 1, 2. So this range 5 is iterating over these values and this range 3 is iterating over this value. So what is happening is that we are multiplying 0 with 0, 0 with 1, 0 with 2, 0 with 3, 0 with 4, then 1 with all 5 values and 2 and so on. So if I is 2, if I is even, so this means that these two will not be there, and if j is also even, these two will not be there. So we're only left with these values, like I multiply with j is 2 twos are 4 once and 4 twos are 8 and so on. So you see we can use these expressions, conditional expressions on only one of the lists or both of the lists, and then create mostly the outputs that we require. So yeah, that was all in this lecture. In the next one, we will have a bit of look at the tuple unpacking. And yeah, keep on practicing these data structures because these are very important and these are now beginning to get a bit more advanced. So do not stop practicing because these are the ones that you will mostly use in your coding. And we will also have sort of an assignment, mini assignment, and that will make your concepts much more clear. So we will meet you in the next video, and up till then, goodbye.